This is Carolyn with the Gospel Missile podcast. This is part one of a two-part series where we go into quite a bit of detail on how we came to have such a large family and the biblical reasons for that. We pray that you are both blessed and entertained by this content that we provide.
We have had, over the course of several years, the question posed to us. In fact, recently you were approached by a couple talking about this. The question was, why have you chosen to have so many children? Why do you have so many children? Was it your plan? That those kinds of questions. What's your initial take on that? Like, what's your approach when somebody asks you a question like that?
Well, in the case of the couple that approached me, I knew it was serious. Like, it wasn't like a joke. Like, they weren't giving me a hard time about having children. Like, she had like some legitimate feelings that she was trying to sort through. Now, that's different from the usual stuff that happens. Like, when people ask us those questions, I very often don't think they're serious, because I don't think they actually want to know what we think, what we believe, or why we've made the choices we've made, because they've made their judgment and they just feel like they have to say things, to fill the dead air.
Like the time that sweet lady said to me at church, like, if I knew what did that. That was what in response to us telling people about I think
so, yeah.
So if we ever air a piece of this, just the background. I'm Chris. That's you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Carolyn.
Okay. That's great. There's no video here, so we can't point to each other or anything like that. And say I'm. You would not be saying I'm stupid.
I really try not to represent us that way, like even jokingly.
It might give other people the idea that they can say stuff like that too.
Yes.
No, so we have 7 children. One of them at the time of this recording has not yet been born, but we count her. So I remember it was 2010, I think, was really the time frame where we started being like, all right, well, it's time to have kids. We've been married for 2 years. We've known each other for a total of 4. And in your mind, was there some kind of feeling? Like, was there a natural drive, or did you just always see yourself having kids? What kind of changed in 2010 to kind of kick us off down this road?
I don't know if anything actually changed at that point exactly. So I guess to go a little further back is that, like, I didn't grow up as Christian. I didn't believe in God, and I didn't, believe in what I now believe is the sanctity of life or anything. But I do remember, like, talking about wanting to have 4 kids, and like, even as a young teenager, there was a brief time where I insisted that I would never have children, but I really just said that to hurt my mother.
The things we say.
Even when I said it, I knew I didn't mean it. Lost my train of thought.
It's okay. We can edit it out.
You can edit out my train of thought. That's great.
No, edit out the loss, the derailment.
And I remember when we were dating, like I talked about wanting to have kids, but I had already stated that I didn't want to get married. And I remember that confused you. Because you're just like, okay, so you want to have kids, but you don't want to be married. And that's... I think that's part of what like started you like talking to me about like what was right. So I'm sure we'll address our testimonies at like in more detail at another time. But once we got that sorted out, I accepted Jesus and we got married, and I do think there was a part of me that thought children would fix some of the issues we were having.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have admitted that at the time, and I don't think that was like my primary reason. Like, we were married and we wanted kids. Why should we wait? Like, I was 25. I was 23. I was 25 when Dorian was born.
Yeah.
Like that, there was that period of wondering what was wrong with me or you or both of us.
Yeah.
Because it really wasn't for lack of trying.
No, it wasn't for lack of trying. So background on me real quick. I grew up quite differently. I grew up in what most people would call the middle class. I grew up with, a stable home environment. It wasn't all like peaches and cream. I don't know if I've ever said that before, but it wasn't all great. But it was, I had a dad and I had a mom and I had brothers and we had a house and we had 2 cars. My dad had a job, and when he was in between employment, he was very enterprising and ran a business on the side all the time anyway. But that business supported us when he didn't have a paycheck. So I grew up in church. I was in 2nd grade when I accepted Jesus and was baptized and did that the whole like raised my hand and went down to the altar and all that kind of stuff. My pedigree of being a Baptist growing up is quite legit. But I didn't want to stay home, and so I left home and I lived much like the prodigal did, and in the process of that journey, I found you, and I don't remember at what point it was where I said I wanted to marry you, and I decided I was going to be with you. But I remember that there was, like, I don't remember like a specific day, but I remember getting to a point in our relationship where I didn't want to start over with anybody else. I didn't want our relationship to dissolve, and I recognized in you a kind of, I don't know, a hurting. Like, I knew you as you were hurting, and I knew that your past had been very painful, some of which you told me about, and some of which you didn't at the time, and that's okay. I'm certainly not judging you for that, and I've learned more about it over time, and learned that was correct in the way I felt about it. It was, you definitely had gone through some pain. So I remember I do remember this distinct moment, to back up a little bit, while I was still in the Navy, where I was coming home from deployment, actually, and I was looking at the lighthouse on Point Loma, and I says, man, it's time. Like, I want a family, I want to find a wife. And I didn't know how to do that, and I found you online after a few sour fishes, and and we hit it off really well. But it wasn't too long before things, like, we were just both completely dysfunctional, and as human beings, we were both completely dysfunctional, and we didn't, to fast forward, you did ended up accepting Jesus and as the Lord of your life, even though we didn't immediately just headlong charge into the path of that, but it's just been like this hammering process. And it started at OB1, which is Ocean Beach First Baptist. It started there, and just through different movements of really God's symphony in our life, that we get to this point of, hey man, it's time to have kids. And I remember saying that you want to have kids. I remember saying that you think it was time to have kids. And I don't remember I'm not getting any younger comment.
I don't think people say that in their 20s.
No.
We're going to live forever when we're in our 20s.
Yeah.
Nothing hurts.
It's like that Skillet song, Not Gonna Die. No, so things do hurt. Oh my gosh. It's just they don't have long-term effects until you're 39 and you're wondering about your knees. But I remember having those 2 years when we were trying to have it was just tough, and you going through the I heard that
Both.
Faraday bag. We need a Faraday bag. So I remember that we were going through all this, and it turns out that you're good, and we go through the process of me checking me out, and that was painful and awkward. But I'm good. So we just started doing everything that we could, scientifically, like, all right, so it's possible.
Like things based on our own understanding.
Right. It's possible. And 13 years later, 14, 15 years later, I'm realizing really kind of just now that was the Lord not blessing us in that way yet. And we weren't ready. I mean, we were still smoking pot, and we were still drinking a lot, and we were still just being kind of young and dumb. And it's just not the environment that the Lord was ready to do with us. And so finally, I remember the day that I was talking to that dude Sam in La Mesa, and you came and got me, and you had taken a test, and it was positive, you were pregnant, everything that we have been trying to do. And I don't even remember praying about it. Like, I don't even remember, I don't think I was praying
at
all at that time.
the funny part I remember about that day is when we were at church, like we were in our Sunday school.
Right,
and
it was a Sunday.
there was breakfast, and like it was like eggs, or like it was like some kind of, like whatever you get, egg casserole thing. And
Oh yeah, good old white people food.
like you gave me a bite and I like spit it out, and you looked at me so weird, and we both kind of like
what is wrong with you? Like, the Lord has blessed this food. Somebody made this. Somebody got up early to make this.
So I was like, I couldn't wait to like get home and take the test. And yeah, like we got home, and I go in the bathroom, and you were walking the dog. That's how you ran into Sam. And
Yeah.
I was just, what's taking him so long to get back in here? Like, I was trying to wait. But you were not catching my mind bullets.
No, I was not catching the mind bullets. And for the record, I can't.
Yeah.
Never have. Never will. Well, no, I'll die by that. So when that happened, like, how did you feel? Like, did you feel a sense of relief? Like, were you scared all of a sudden? And because I was growing like pot in our closet,
Right.
and all I want to do is play guitar and skate my life through school, and let the government pay me to do that.
Yeah, that was the I don't want to have to work for anybody phase.
Still doing that.
I know. I don't know. There was definitely a feeling of like, okay, finally, it is possible. But I know like that there was this whole season of just not really thinking that anything would go wrong, and definitely not being open to anybody telling me anything, because I knew everything.
No, me too. We went to college, and we had this like just this great Class A community college education on the proper way to have kids in the natural way, and we want to have all of our babies in a tub, and want to give them a yes environment. Yeah. For the record, realistically, that doesn't work.
No.
Not at home. Maybe at school.
There's like the stuff that's in, like, even at school. There's what's in the textbooks. There's the ideal. There's the theory.
There's a theoretical ideal, because that's what that is.
And then there's life.
Oh man. So, well, that's great. So we have her.
His coming into the world really helped define a lot of like things, as far as just how. So there was that whole ridiculous time frame where I had I might have a copy of that original birth plan somewhere that involved my mom, my sister, my brother, Christy, and my dad.
Ugh. Oh, I remember that day. We show the midwife. She's like, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, she actually showed us some research about how the more people you have present, the longer it takes.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And there was even that couple that lived in our apartment complex that had gone to the same birth center, and she didn't want her mother-in-law there. her husband did not respect that boundary.
Right.
And so, like, she's trying to have a baby, and her mother-in-law's, like, coming in and out of the room. And every time her mother-in-law came in the room, it, like, stalled everything out. And so there just came a point in time where we were just secretly planning to not tell anybody when I went into labor.
Well, I mean, so we walked the 3 miles, and your mom and sister came over, like, you're laboring, and we were timing everything out, and then it stopped.
Yeah.
So I think I went back to, like, doing schoolwork after dinner.
Yeah.
And, by this time we quit smoking pot, actually. Yeah. We quit smoking in January. I guess there's some timelines there are really kind of condemning.
It's difficult math, but, truth is truth.
But... we had done all that, and I wasn't. You weren't drinking, and I wasn't drinking a lot. I still think I was drinking a little, but not a lot.
That had more to do with money than what you wanted to be doing.
Well, yeah, we were pretty destitute at that time. In fact, we were. I had begun to do the math around this time as to what it would be like to come back to Georgia versus, like, the money we get in Georgia versus the money we have in California, and how much further and how little that would go. And at the time, it was like, just to move, it was like a 25% pay increase because our dollars went further. You can ask me questions too. Like, this is a dialogue, not an interview.
Right. You like to hear yourself talk, so you volunteer information.
Oh, well. So you have no questions. I decline to answer that.
You've kind of... There was a point in time where I didn't have a problem asking you questions, but it would cause a problem. And so I've had to come away from that. I look back on that time and I feel like there was a lot that I insisted, like, things be a certain way. And it's easy for me to be like, oh, well, he was totally on board. But were you?
In California, I didn't really have any family, so I didn't really feel like I was slighting anybody or, keep shutting somebody out or anything like that. And I had spent my adult years, kind of severed from them. The military will do that, and then I met this girl, and I stayed, and I had adopted the.
You stayed and stayed stoned.
I had adopted the culture, is what I was gonna say. Those phrases are synonymous. No, I remember being pretty much on board. I can't think of anything that I was like choosing my battles over. I think by that point in time, like, we pretty much had the same ideas about what we wanted to do with children and how to have children. You had said 4, and I was like, well, that's a pretty good number. I grew up with 3, and 3 in the house, so 4, yeah, 4 is fine. So we moved back to Georgia, and that's a whole story in itself.
Talk about a lesson in humility. And somehow this has gone uninterrupted by children.
Yeah, that's weird. At what time after Junior was born, and we moved here when he was 9 months old, and I remember celebrating a year at my dad's house, and 2014 rolls around, or really late 2013, and we find ourselves again, looking at a positive pregnancy test, and it was, like, for me, it was like a sigh of relief, like, oh, we can do this again.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just a fluke.
Right. So just to be clear about choices that we've made throughout this process is that, like, before we had Junior, I had been on oral birth control. And then after he was born, I went back on the hormonal birth control. And I actually don't really remember. Like, at some point we decided for me to stop taking it so that we could have another one, or at least try. I don't remember there being like this, I don't know, like you were working at that safety place.
Yeah.
I know I was waiting till we moved out of your dad's because I did not want to get pregnant while we were still there.
Oh yeah, that would have been the conversation that we're talking about. Like, what do you mean? Like, you can't you can't support yourself right now? What do you mean you're having another kid? Like, do you not know how that works?
Oh my gosh. So I guess moving out of his house was like that was part of the deciding factor, but it couldn't have been the only thing. Other than just like it's what you're supposed to do. Like the convictions that we have about it took a long time to develop. Like it's been a part of our maturation as Christians to have the convictions that we have now about having children.
Well, okay, well let's shift gears and talk about that then. So I remember a root of that is I was listening to sermons while I was working, and we were already in the Covington house.
Yeah.
And at that point, we'd already had twins.
Yeah.
So 3 and 4 had come along. And we were kind of just questioning, like, is this it? Is this where we need to stay? And I can't remember the exact timeline.
I think we already had Albus too.
Okay.
So
Yeah, you're right.
We had Mary News in 2012.
Right.
Barry in 2014.
Right.
We did lose one.
We did.
And I think that was the beginning of the change in how we see having children.
Right, and that was 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, that doesn't happen to me. That happens to other people.
Well, statistically, it happens to almost everybody.
But that's not what I thought.
Right.
And then we got the twins. And man, was it annoying to hear people say, oh, you're having twins? So it's like you're having one and the one you lost is getting replaced.
Oh, man. I remember thinking that, like, I guess it was a similar thought, but I remember thinking privately that math doesn't work.
No.
Because, we lost, what was it, June or July? Was it July? July.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's July 2016. By October, we would have had to conceive the twins. Because we knew they were, what they knew, we knew in November, which we had Thanksgiving in the mountains. We knew you were pregnant at the time. Maybe not that we were having twins.
And we weren't telling people
And we
yet.
hadn't told people yet.
Yeah.
So, that's a conversation in itself about whether you do that or not. So we had the twins, and I remember going through that, and you're like, I'm ready to have another one. And there's a point in the process. I think it's usually in the weaning process where you're like, man, I'm gonna miss this. Let's do it again. And I'm not joking. It's almost predictable at this point, you know. So we had this, and that was our COVID baby.
Yeah.
That's a story in itself. Like, it's just, each one of these children, each one of these pregnancies is just its own story. At that time when Sam was getting pretty done with the breastfeeding, and you and I had started doing layout. So I was doing layout for my company and breaking the rules when I was working by myself and listening to podcasts and listening to sermons in particular, because I had learned that in my area of recovery, I needed to fill my head with anything other than the world. So I was just binging on sermons. Just binging on sermons, and one particular preacher in particular spoke about families and spoke about biblical fatherhood and biblical motherhood and biblical roles and of the husband and the wife and all of that, and that was the Vodi Bakum era of,
if the heart wants what it wants, and this is bigger than both of us, and none of our marriages are safe.
Yeah. That particular sermon you're referencing is the romantic love. Like, we shouldn't love romantically. In the, you know, if you look at the sense of the word Roman and how they viewed love, and that was a complete reversal from the stoicism of the Greeks and all of that. Which, you know, when the pendulum swings wide, you know, both ends are in a terrible place. But he spoke a lot about that, but he spoke a lot about what the children are, what our duty is, and to fast forward a bit, he's basically talking about dominion in this world and what we were put here to do and why we're here to do it, and
ballistic missiles for the gospel.
Ballistic missiles for the gospel. And, you know, I really adopted that kind of mindset. I know I've said that to people several times. It really should be my go-to thing. I guess I'm feeling a little bit of conviction right now that it's not.
Okay, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. As we mentioned before, this is part 1 of a 2-part episode. So if you like what you're hearing, you want to hear more of it, you want to continue in the conversation, please look for part 2. And with that, we're going to let you go. We're so excited. Thank you for listening, and God bless you all.